Hello, hello, hello. This is Marshall Goldsmith. Very, very happy to be joining you today on LinkedIn Live. Let me briefly introduce myself for those of you that I may not have met before, and I'll introduce my comrade Sanyin, and then we will get rolling with two wonderful guests today. Now, today our topic is Purpose and Strategy, a Global View. Purpose and strategy, a global view of how do you maintain this sense of purpose and strategy in today's rapidly changing, crazy, crazy world. Now, my name is Marshall. I'm from a small town called Valley Station, Kentucky. I went to school in Indiana. I got a PhD at UCLA. I was a college professor and dean, and then for 43 years, I travel around the world giving talks and teaching classes. I've been to 102 countries. I coach executives. I've been the coach of the CEOs of Ford and Pfizer and Glaxo and the World Bank and Mayo Clinic and so many wonderful, wonderful people. And that's basically where I learned everything. And then the other thing I do is I write and edit books and articles. So I've written or edited 41 books, 3 very, very popular books. Most of my books were purchased only by my mother, my father, and associated relatives. But I've done a few popular books, so that's real good. And I'm here first to be joining you with my wonderful colleague, Sanyin. Now, Sanyin, briefly introduce yourself to the group. Oh, by the way, I'm now in the Hall of Fame, the Thinkers 50 Hall of Fame. Our partners in this process are the wonderful people at Thinkers 50 and Methods who put it on. Methods does a spectacular job. Yes, Sanyin, I was formerly the #1 leadership coach in the entire world, but now I'm in the Hall of Fame. That's where they put old people in the old Hall of Fame, when you get old. So I'm in the old person's zone, the Hall of Fame. And the new #1 coach is my good buddy, Sanyin. Sanyin, briefly introduce yourself. Sanyin, you have to hit the mute button. Sanyin.
Hi, everyone. I got it. Hi, everyone. I'm Sanyin Siang. That's good coaching, Marshall. Thank you. I'm Sanyin Siang, and I've learned so much from you, Marshall, and also from our fellow 100 coaches, 2 of whom the members are here as our guests today. I help leaders in their organizations prepare for what's next through leadership, and I work with CEOs, military generals, tech founders, and I'm also a faculty member at Duke University, where I run the Coach K Leadership and Ethics Center at the Fuqua School of Business. And before we forget, viewers, if you chiming in, please put in your questions in the comments because at the end, we will ask those questions to our guests. So be sure to ask questions in the chat and we'll get to as many as we can today. So I can start off by introducing Pawel before handing it off to Marshall to introduce Himanshu. So Pawel Motyl, Pawel Motyl, who is coming, this is a global view after all. Pawel is coming to us from Warsaw, Poland. And Pawel is my good friend, our good friend. He is the author of a game called Labyrinth. Both Marshall and I are proud endorsers of that book. He ran Harvard Business Review Poland, and he is one of the leading decision-making experts in the world. And boy, do we need to know how we can rethink decision-making today, right? Back to you, Marshall.
I'm going to introduce my great friend, Himanshu Saxena. Himanshu is in Mumbai, and he is one of the leading global coaches of the world. He's also an expert on purpose, strategy, mindfulness, and also just a good guy. So welcome, Himanshu.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you. Yeah. Pleasure being there. It's an honor to be with you.
Oh, it's great to have you guys. And we're all and by the way, I went to this program, I forgot to say this, called Design the Life You Love years ago, put on by our good friend Aisha Bursell, wonderful, wonderful woman. And she asked me who were my heroes, and they were kind and generous people who are great teachers. And she said, well, why don't you be more like them? So I decided I'm going to basically adopt people, teach them all I know for free, and the only price is when they get old, they have to do the same thing. So anyway, 3 of my wonderful people are, of course, the wonderful Sanyin and Pawel and Himanshu. We have just a spectacular group of people from around the world. Just wonderful, wonderful people. And the idea is we all try to help each other. We share everything we know with everybody for free. And the only price is when other people get old, they have to do the same thing. Now, before we get started, we'll start with Pavel. Pavel, what's one of your reflections on being in our lovely 100 Coaches group?
Oh, it's the most amazing experience as far as my professional life is concerned. I'm delighted to be part of this community. It's absolutely fabulous to both share know-how and learn from the others. So it's really a mind-blowing group of people.
Thank you. How about you, Himanshu?
I think this is one of the best families I've come across. What you have created is a really community of purpose. And the best part is that each one of us inspires to do better and contribute and serve, truly living up to your expectation of pay it forward. I always say two things can change the course of life: the books that you read and the people that you meet. And I'm lucky to have met you and 100 coaches who changed my life. Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you. Now, thank you both. We're in a period of unprecedented and rapid change. Just getting started, please share some of your reflections on strategy, purpose during this period of unprecedented and rapid change that we face right now. We'll start with Pavel, then we'll go to Himanshu.
Good. One of the things that has changed from the point of view of decision making, and this is a major shift, is the following. For the last 10 years, since the previous crisis of 2008, 2009, we've been making decisions, we've been operating in the world of complexity. There was a number of factors we had to take into account. We're making decisions, a lot of data we had to analyze. We had to juggle many balls at the same time. Still, we had some tools that were helping us in coping with complexity. Strategy is one of those tools to make better decisions and to align efforts of people in the organizations. We had operational plans, we had procedures. These are all the tools that helped us to deal with complexity. Now, with the COVID-19 crisis, we suddenly moved into a world of ambiguity. And the issue with ambiguity is that we really don't know what's going to happen next. So we might be prepared with some scenarios, but the point is that if you had some strategy for 2020, most probably a good part of it is no longer meaningful. You cannot do anything with that because the rules for the game has changed. So from the point of view of making decisions, this is a major shift. Now we have to make decisions under ambiguity.
Very good. And one thing I think is very important during periods of ambiguity is to have a dialogue with people so you're clear on what are the existing priorities, number one. Number two, to really communicate these may change at any time. And then number three, to make sure that both people take responsibility. So if I'm a leader, I would say, if you have any doubts, ambiguity, or confusion, I want you to take the time to talk to me. So Pavel, as you said, both parties are consistently looking at alignment and having clarity that today's strategy may change. Next week's strategy could be quite different than today.
Definitely. Just to add to that, there are two things that are absolutely critical today when you have to make decisions in ambiguity. The first of them is agility. If there is something new happening tomorrow, and it can be any event, any, as we call it, black swan event, something we're unable to foresee, then the way you respond is actually being the differentiator between the winners and the losers. If you can react in a swift, agile way, the probability that you're going to win is much better. And then secondly, the other element is mitigating the risks that are critical, because you don't want to be too agile facing the risks that might be critical for your business. Now, if you want to assess the risks in a proper way, then the seamless communication with each and every stakeholder of the company is essential.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that a lot of times when we don't know what the outcomes of any decision is going to be, that it goes back to our values. And so in that, Himanshu, you are one of the world's experts on purpose and strategy. How does knowing what our purpose is as an organization lead to the chances of those better outcomes?
Yeah, thank you, Sanyin. So I'd like to pick it up from where Paul left about decision making. I've had 6 careers in my life, and one of the longest one being in the military. And the one lesson that we learned as a young captain that in any decision, 3 things are extremely important. They are what is your stake, what are the implications, and what is the impact. Now, what we learned that the biggest and boldest is a crisis. Give more attention to impact and less to implication and less to stake. In the normal scenario, we end up giving more attention to the stakes. So, in this crisis and an unprecedented event, I think what is the impact of this entire thing? That has to be the forbearing factor in making any decision. Now, black swans are unpredictable events. They are in a predictable world, but the fact that we associate the word unpredictable, that does not mean they do not exist, but it is our ability to see them coming is usually missing. I often postulate that the universe is largely empty with lots of empty spaces. All it contains energy and consciousness. Now, whosoever can have the consciousness to imagine a possibility and harness the energy can go on to create things of form, function, and functionality. Like Wright brothers once imagined that humans can fly, and they went on to create that possibility. But that time, flying was a black swan event. Now, black swans are someone's figment of imagination. In fact, we often feast on such crazy imagination in the form of Hollywood, Bollywood movies. Now, what is required is, and what the world must do, cater for the possibility. No matter how less probable it is, one must cater for the possibility. The second piece is plan for that eventuality with scenario planning. And third, at least articulate its response when such an event happens. What is going to be your response? Trust me, if we had articulated the process, we knew whether there is a blue book or a red book that we can consult. But in the absence of articulation, we could be at sea and having lots of chaos. So, in crisis like this, it's very important to cater for the possibility, plan for the eventuality, and articulate our response mechanism. I once wrote an article in Fast Company, and I said the CEOs can have 3 roles in the organization. The first one I postulated as Chief Reimagination Officer. The purpose of Chief Reimagination Officer is to reimagine the context. The second is Chief Paradigm Officer. The purpose of Paradigm Officer is to predict the paradigm. And the third one is Chief Paradox Officer. The job of a paradox officer is to manage the paradox of reimagination and the new paradigm. It was a crazy idea, but I think if we had such roles, probably someone would have picked it up. Sanyin.
Thank you. Now, both of you, all of this requires leadership to be in the right frame of mind, the right mindset. And actually, all of us here are mindfulness practitioners. So, Himanshu, talk to us about how mindfulness helps leaders make better decisions, and then we'll shift to you, Pavel.
Yeah. See, the purpose of mindfulness is to reduce the noise in your mind. Because if you are clear about there is an inner voice, and that inner voice really allows us to take the best decision if we can cut down the noise. Now, I like to pick the example which Obama was handling while making a decision for the elimination of Osama bin Laden. Now, there was a whole lot of noise, CIA chief, Mike Mullen, and everybody, and they said this intelligence is 50-50. And he actually went for a decision making in the form of a vote. Now, in a house divided by 50-50, the leader could be in a quandary what decision to do. Eventually, he heard everyone. I think attended a show, put his kids to sleep. Then he went to his library and spent time with himself listening to the inner voice. And that's where he felt that 50-50 on a high value target is a good intelligence. And that's where the mindfulness came into being to enable us listen to the deepest innermost voice, which allows us to inculcate and embed the best decision. So in a nutshell, the mindfulness is listen to everything, but how do you get into that being? Because at that moment, it is the art of thinking clearly, choosing precisely, and acting decisively. And that's where mindfulness is so relevant. Sanyin.
And let me add to that one more thing, because we are still calling the situation today unprecedented, but I think there is a number of events in the past that could be a great inspiration and at the same time best practice in what we could do. I encouraged everyone to go back to 1970 to go through the rescue mission of Apollo 13. This is one of my favorite stories, and with all proportions, it was a very, very similar situation. They were operating under ambiguity. Nobody has never practiced anything like that before. There were no procedures for that situation. A number of black swan events happened at the same time. They had to mitigate critical risks. And they were working in virtual teams, because let me remind you that the Apollo program had 500 subcontractors in the US. So all those people were virtually, literally dragged from their beds, and they had to start working and solving the issue they faced. Now, go through that story. You can either watch the movie, you can read the book by Gene Kranz, who was the head of the mission. And there is a number of lessons that could be derived from that story. I'm always saying that one of the things that is the purpose of the leader today, and it really connects with this mindfulness approach that Himanshu mentioned, is to make sure that the team is operating in an optimal way. And there are 4 conditions for this optimal operation of any team. The first thing is interdependent goal. So the goal that is dependent on the efforts and contribution from each and every team member. Then secondly, clear roles that are clear to everyone on the team, and at the same time, they are accepted by everyone. Thirdly, shared norms and values. And finally, the trust between team members. And I am of the opinion that currently, under the crisis that we're facing, each of those elements might be under pressure. Maybe your company had to restructure a bit. Maybe you had to lay off some employees. Maybe your priorities changed. It is a very good time for us as leaders to come back to our organizations, to our teams, and ask these 4 questions. First of all, are we still having an interdependent goal with new priorities, new objectives? Secondly, if we change the structures, if we had to lay off somebody, are we still absolutely clear about the roles? Are there some overlaps? Are there some gaps between accountabilities? And is everybody comfortable with how the roles are assigned? Thirdly, are we still operating within the same norms and values? Do we see them in the same way? And finally, is there still the trust that we need in order to succeed? So I think the leaders, if they want to be mindful, truly mindful now, one thing is the definition that Himanshu offered. But secondly, let's remember that we were dragged out of our comfort zones. Everyone. So what we need now is also emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and empathy. We have to both have this insight into our emotions, but at the same time understand the emotions of others and help them go through this difficult period of time.
Sanyin, you asked a question about mindfulness. Yeah, I'm a Buddhist. That's a very, very interesting topic to me. Percentage of how mindful was I today? So I do this on a daily basis. My average score is probably 25 to 30%. And by the way, that is in and of itself probably an exaggeration. Mindfulness to me is very easy to talk about and incredibly difficult to do. I found that I have one major problem that inhibits me from being mindful. What is it? I forget to be mindful.
Yeah, it's a daily discipline, Marshall.
I forget to be mindful. So I got to carry around a little card to kind of remind me to be mindful. Mindful, good. Remember to be mindful. Because I would be very mindful, yet I forget. So, that's my major drawback on this mindfulness thing, just remembering to do it all the time.
And Marshall, there is a price for mindfulness. Sometimes when you're too mindful, your wife tells you where your mind has been, why you're not paying attention to me. So there is a price you pay.
There you go. Yeah. Himanshu, I happen to know your wife is there, so you best be careful right now.
Yes.
I know both Himanshu's wife and Pavel's wife, so you both better mind your P's and Q's. Now, Justin, are you with us? Do we have any good questions today? Justin, we can't hear you. Push that button.
Mute off. Can you hear me? Hello. Hello, hello.
Hello, now I can hear you. Now we can hear
perfect. You. Great. Got a couple good questions for you all, and more flowing
Justin
in. So
would be mindful,
the first
but
one
he
comes
forgot
from
to push the...
Nith Kumar from India, and he says, many say that the strategy for now is survival, making quick decisions to adapt. And when we do come out okay at the end of this thing, then we can chase our larger purpose at that time. What are your thoughts on this?
That's a good one. Sanyin, what are your thoughts on that first? Purpose today is survival. In other words, I remember a song. Wait, Sanyin, wait. Staying alive, staying alive.
Yes.
I actually would reframe our purpose from survival to thriving, right? Because survival, it's very short term, but it doesn't get us to enduring sustainability. But if we're thriving, and actually how we thrive, it's about we're all becoming, right? Our organizations, let's face it, it's never going to go back to the way things were. Exactly, that world is gone. But guess what? We have the opportunity to rebuild and create a new world, right? And these pivots that our organizations are going through, all that has to go back to what is our purpose, because that's how we can make the right pivots that can build on our strongest foundations. So, and when we are able to pivot around our purpose and rebuild and reimagine around that, our core purpose, not only are we able to survive in the short term, that's how we're able to thrive, because our employees, our team members, our customers, they are longing for that deep sense of meaning and purpose right now. So that's my take. But Himanshu and Pavel, would love your thoughts on this.
Yep. Let me start with the following. There are like three key elements in strategic management to me. The first one is mission and vision, so the purpose, why we do what we do, and the long-term objective we are pursuing. Then secondly, we've got strategy, which is the answer, what are we going to do in the next 2, 3, maybe 5 years in order to succeed. And finally, we've got strategic priorities, which are the answer to the question, okay, what should we focus on in the next 6 months or so. Now, under complexity, the driving force for decision making was the second one, was the strategy. What is happening now, and this is actually what this question is referring to, yes, we have to manage priorities in a perfect way, but the more agile we are in maneuvering, in choosing the priorities, changing them when situation changes and so on, the more important is that we are still aligned towards the same vision. So today, vision is more important than ever before. The vision of how we want to overcome the crisis, but also the long-term vision and the purpose of the company, why we are doing that, why we are striving for survival. So I love the question, actually. Yes, priorities are super important, but at the same time, never forget the vision and the purpose, why we are doing that.
Thank you. So, Sanyin, in my view on this is the purpose of life is graceful survival. And I'm using the word graceful. Now, if we only focus on surviving, we cannot survive gracefully. In fact, right now it's time to have a bifocal vision. So one part of that bifocal vision is on graceful survival. And that's where I like to use these 3 words, which is called preserve, conserve, and reserve. We need to preserve our health, personal health or the health of the company. We need to conserve our energy and vigor, and we need to reserve our assets for future leverage. So I spoke about the graceful survival, and that means that if you only focus on surviving, we'll become extinct. We need to have the bifocal vision, where one eye is on the immediate sorting out the mess, and the other eye is on to look for rebound and life beyond COVID. See, every time there's a crisis that has come, whether it's World War, 9/11, people have survived gracefully are the ones who focused on getting better from where they left and not trying to come and reach where they were before. So that's where the bifocal vision will come handy. And preserve, conserve, and reserve is a good strategy to have at this point of time. Sanyin.
And I love, between your two answers, there's this sense of looking forward at the future, right? And there's this saying that goes, in order to know where we're going, we have to know where we come from. And that's the why and the purpose for our reason for being. That's the why. And then the pivots, the decisions in between, and how agile we are, that's going to be what allows us to get there faster. Justin, can we have another question from you, from the audience?
Yes, absolutely, Sanyin, and hopefully the audio is working now. We've got a great one from across the world in Slovenia, probably a little closer to you, Pavel. And Tanya says, what do we as individuals, as a collective, and as leaders need to unlearn, relearn, and learn all over again to make good decisions in these rapidly changing times?
Pavel, why don't we start with you, and then
go first? All right. Slovenia is indeed closer to Poland, and I love Slovenia. Triglav is one of my favorite mountains in Europe. Coming back to the question, I also love the quote from Alvin Toffler, that the illiterate of the 21st century won't be the one who cannot read or write, but the one who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn again. And I think that what is currently happening under COVID-19 crisis is also a fantastic opportunity, and I mean it, opportunity to unlearn certain practices that maybe were powerful and gave us success in the past, but they are no longer that effective and that efficient. You know this old saying that there is no growth in a comfort zone and no comfort in a growth zone. And we've been mentioning this famous or infamous comfort zone so many times, but we felt so comfortable in it. So nowadays, to me, it's a great time for exercising both personal change, learning new things, learning new competencies, being more agile in things that we do, and at the same time, giving up some old practices that are simply no longer working. And at the same time, it's a great time to transform our companies, because always the worst enemy of any change was inertia resulting from success. So if the times were good, and the last 10 years, it was a good time for businesses, we were postponing some of the changes that were necessary. Look at digital transformation. Everybody's been talking about digital transformation for so many years, and still the processes were not implemented at such speed as companies would like them to. Nowadays, we have all transformed our companies with our home offices, lockdowns, and so on, video conferencing softwares. This world is going to be totally different after COVID, which doesn't mean it's going to be worse than it was before. So this is, to me, the most powerful thing about unlearning and relearning today. It's a great opportunity.
Himanshu?
Yes. So firstly, don't let a crisis go waste. This is a wonderful opportunity. Now, the question firstly, Slovenia, we were on holiday on Lake Bled. It's a beautiful place. Anybody who's not been, one must visit. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. Okay, what do we learn, unlearn, and relearn? Three things. Start with mindset, then skill sets, and third is behavior. Now, mindsets begin with our belief system. I think it's a great time to audit our belief, that which belief who are part of an experiences that we grew up with are not going to be relevant. It's a good time to audit our beliefs. When we do the auditing of beliefs, we come across some unfounded assumptions. There are a lot of fears we have. I often use this phrase called FANS: fears, assumptions, notions, and self limiting beliefs. And these are the ones who are actually in our way, like boulders. But they're not big boulders, they're like cataract in our eyes. All we need to do is circumvent around and find the possibilities beyond that. So get your assumptions, write them down, test them, discuss with the people who can give you good feedback. So these are the elements that will come part of the unlearning. A new mindset, a mindset of using technology, a mindset of globally connected world, a mindset of collaboration and not competition. Look at Glaxo and Sanofi are collaborating for creating a vaccine. So these are the new mindset that will come handy. The third is, which behaviors are going to make me relevant for another 10, 20 years? The other day, Marshall was talking in the call that, oh, initially I thought I'm going to be retiring. And then I said, no, I'm not done. There's a God in my life and I'm going to learn a few new things. So our neural pathways, they become stale when something has been written to them like a 3D printing. When you do something new, the same neural pathways expand, contract, and create new possibilities. So this is where skills come. All those skills that we would have ran away from them and shied away. It's no harm in trying them. I'm learning piano, and Jonas from our group is going to teach me my first classes on Tuesday. And it's not a bad time to learn something new. Sanyin.
These are wonderful. Thank you so much for your wonderful answers. This idea of being, just as we as individuals have to have continuous learning, our organizations also collectively have to have that continuous learning mindset and have the skills and behaviors to be able to support that. With that, this has been such a rich show. Thank you, Pawel and Himanshu, for being with us and sharing your wisdom. We would love to thank, and Marshall, we had, due to technical difficulties, we lost Marshall, but Marshall, our great coach, our mentor, our friend, who has brought all of us together with the 100 coaches. We'd love to thank all the viewers out there. Please keep commenting, because Pawel and Himanshu, Marshall, and I will be reading those comments, and we'll be responding, and also share with us your reflections and takeaways and put them in the comments. We would love to hear from you. And then last but not least, thank you to the Methods Network for pulling this all together, and also to the Hastings Studio, who are running our social media strategy, and to the 100 Coaches, our wonderful organization of comrades, and Thinkers 50 for being partners with us throughout all of this. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Absolutely.